Hi guys, TJ here. So I wanted to answer a very interesting question. This is something that gets thrown to me quite regularly, whether it's in an event or whether it's through YouTube or whether it's on Facebook. And I would be naive not to consider it as a very, very important question. Now, people who have been in the property market for years and years and years are probably wondering exactly the same thing as well. So for the people who have asked the question, you're on the right track, and great questions, in fact. So the question is, how will Brexit affect the property market? Now, the people that have been asking these questions tend to be people who are brand new or people who are considering or maybe thinking about getting into property sooner rather than later. And they want to know how these specific strategies will affect your ability to make money in the coming few weeks and few months. So how will Brexit affect us in property? Now, I'm not an economist, so don't take what I'm saying too serious. In fact, take it with a pinch of salt, but just look at it from my perspective. And I'm going to be very specific with regards to what aspect of property I talk about. So I'll be talking about how Brexit will affect my core business, which is serviced accommodation. Now, I want you to follow me on this, and I hope you have a basic understanding about what serviced accommodation is and what it's not. But how will it affect us when we Brexit? We'll go with one assumption. We will go with an assumption that there are, let's say, 40 million people who currently travel into the UK every single year. That 40 million people spend around £28 billion on luxury goods, on accommodation, and just spending money while they are here. Okay, now most of those people, so the way they're classified are 40 million overnight guests, overnight visitors. So these are 40 million people who need somewhere to stay when they stay here. And right now they're staying in B&Bs, hotel, guest houses, serviced accommodation, 40 million people. Now let's go with the assumption that this is what's going to happen when we Brexit. Somebody living in Europe might now need a visa to fly into the UK, such as we might need a visa to fly into Europe. So it means these quick getaway trips that we're usually making are going to be reduced. So out of those 40 million people, let's go with the assumption that that 40 million then drops down to, let's say, 30 million people. In fact, let's go a little bit crazy and let's say we only get 20 million visitors a year, spending 18 billion or even 8 billion. This is where you've got to start getting a little bit smarter, because when we first got into service accommodation, we looked at things from a very linear point of view, which is we are going to provide accommodation for tourists and leisure guests. And that's what most people think service accommodation is, and that's where they focus their attention. As we are going to, in my opinion, have a limited or a reduced number of people coming into the UK for overnight stays, if we Brexit, when whatever happens, then you've got to be a bit more smarter with your strategy. So write this down, because these are the people that stay in serviced accommodation or hotels. Number 1, contractors. Number 2, corporates. Number 3, leisure. Number 4, groups. Number 5, bleisure. Bleisure is business and leisure. Those 5 people are the people that you've got to start focusing on attracting and targeting if you want your serviced accommodation business to weather the Brexit storm. So should you still get into serviced accommodation? Absolutely. Should you focus solely on providing accommodation for the leisure market? Absolutely not. So my old criteria was, if I could find a property in a decent location that took care of one of those 5, then it was a viable option to take on and add to our units. But things have changed. You've got to be really smart now. What we've done is we've now set the criteria at 3 out of 5. So if I'm taking on a unit right now, and I'm advising if you're taking on a unit right now, make sure your unit fits at least 3 out of the 5 of the users of serviced accommodation, so you are at least protecting yourself. Let me go a little bit deeper. Follow me in this, and I'll end this video very soon. So go with this. 40 million people staying overnight in the UK every single year, spending 28 billion. Let's say we have a reduction. That goes to 20 million overnight visitors, which are typically tourist, leisure, and groups. Okay? So what you've got to do to protect yourself going forward is this. Instead of just taking on a property that focuses on accommodating tourists and groups, you've got to now factor how you can make sure corporates, contractors are now part of your, what's the best word? They're now part of the service that you're providing. Because if we say 40 million people, overnight guests, were tourists and groups, that diminishes and that reduces. But guess what? Will people still have to go to work when we Brexit? Will people still have to build new developments for contractors when we Brexit? Of course they are. So you've got to be smart, and you've got to say, okay, well, if I'm going to have a reduction in overnight stays in terms of groups and tourists, then I need to make sure that I'm providing accommodation for the other set of people that are not going to be majorly affected, who are also big components of the people that use serviced accommodation. I hope this really makes sense. So I don't know whether I'm going too deep, but you can listen back to this on the podcast. You can find this on YouTube, wherever. Let me know if it makes sense. The point I'm trying to make here is protect yourselves at all angles. Should you still be starting a property business, although we don't know what's going to happen? Of course you should, but make sure you're protecting yourself. I'll catch you soon. Bye-bye.